everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to share with you how to make this heat transfer pouch. It's a super easy project for beginners, and I will show you the process from start to finish. So if you want to follow along, you can do that now. For my surface, I will be using this pouch. This is from Hobby Lobby. It's just a regular zippered canvas pouch. It was 99 cents. I'm going to go ahead and remove that tag and just get it ready to go. So what that means is just taking off all the little extra bits that come on it. So both tags, the little hanger, and just removing all of those plastic pieces. Now also inside, you'll find some little silica packages. You want to take those out so you have a nice flat surface. And then I just zip it up and get it ready for measuring. Now to measure, I like to use one of those flexible rulers that you would use whenever you're measuring someone's waist, or like the head if you're doing sewing, those kinds of things. And then for measuring, I like to go from the inside where the two seams are along the side. You have a little bit of fabric on the inside where it's been cut off. So I go from those ends and then also from the bottom of the zipper to the bottom of the bag. It makes it a little bit easier when you know the flat surface area that you're working with. So once you have your measurements of your bag, and it might be different, you want to go ahead and you want to start designing your words. Now there are a number of words you can use. I went with stuff with a period. Very simple. It can be used for a lot of different things. You can use pens. You can use makeup. There are a lot of really cute ideas over on Pinterest, so be sure to check that out just to get some ideas. You can do hello like I'm doing here, but whatever it is, you just want to start in your program that you're using. I'm using Cricut Design Space, and you just want to go to a text box on a new project and spell out your word. I'm doing stuff with a period. Now you can go with your normal font, whatever that may be. I'm going to change my font and make it a fun one. Now, if you have Cricut Design Space, you can pay for a lot of different fonts. I like to download mine for free from the internet. Some of my favorite sites to do that from are DaFont, 1001 Free Fonts, Google Fonts, Creative Fabrica. Then check Pinterest as well. I'm going to leave some links down in the description box below of my favorite sites where to find those fonts at. And if you have some sites that you really like to use, be sure to leave those down in the comments below so everybody else can find them as well. And this is kind of where you can have fun with it. You can scroll through all the different fonts. You can look online at all the different fonts and kind of play with it and see how you want your word to look. So you can go with a really bold font. You can go with a more school theme font if you're making a bag for a teacher. You can go with a really curly font if you're doing something for a little girl. Or if you want this to be more of a masculine type bag, you can go with the more blocky, or even like if you want it to be a Halloween bag, anything like that. There are a ton of different fonts that you can choose from to make it your own or for the recipient you're giving it to. This makes a great gift. So once I have my font selected, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the edit portion, and I'm going to make this fit my bag. I want to fill up that space. So whatever the measurements are of your bag, be sure to fill that in. Now with mine, it goes to about 7.5 inches. So I'm going to go a little bit smaller than that. And then I want to make it about 3 inches long. So have a look whenever you size your font. Use your ruler as a guide and kind of look and see how that's going to look on your bag. Because if you go the width of the bag, it might not fill up the height of the bag. So just have a look. Make sure it's what you want. You can always change it if you unlock the proportional sizes of it. You can make it a little bit taller if you wanted to, or you can make it a little bit thinner if you wanted to. It really is up to you. Play around with the design. Don't be afraid to go in and change things up. If you don't like it, you always have the undo button or the back button, or simply close out of the project and start a new one. You don't have to keep the one that you started if you don't like the outcome of it. You can always change it. So for mine, I wanted to show you exactly how to do this with the Cricut Design Space, but please note that your design program may be a little bit different, but each and every one of these is going to have pretty much the same functions. One thing I will share with you though is when you are designing any type of word art like this, be sure to use those kerning options to space out your letters a little bit more, maybe tuck them in a little bit closer together, especially if you have more than one line of words. Really make those tight fitting, play around with those, get to know them, watch some YouTube videos on them, so whenever you design them, they look right. Now, I had previously created this stuff right here on my computer. I didn't have the same font on my iPad, so I just saved it to my projects and brought it in. No, you can do that too. So if you have an iPad and you like working on that at your Cricut like I do, I don't have a ton of fonts on my iPad. I keep them on my computer. So I design on my computer and then just save it to my projects, and then I can open them down in my craft room on my iPad. So that's what I choose to do, and then I just size it accordingly as I need to. And of course, I'm going to play around a little bit with the kerning and the letter spacing. Make sure that I like the way it is going to look when it comes down to it. Also keep in mind as you are making this, the more intricate you make it, the more you will be weeding this later. So always keep that in the back of your mind too. If you're not a patient person, you might not want to have the most weeding to do later on. So keep it more simple if you want to. I actually like the process of weeding, but for this particular bag, I wanted to go really simple with the lettering. I wanted to go with the simple word, the stuff. I wanted it to kind of fit that theme. So this is the look I chose. Now it's time to go ahead and start preparing to cut. So the first thing we need to do is click Make It. Once you're happy with your design, you're not going to change anymore. Now it's time to start cutting. The very first thing you need to remember is when you are using iron-on vinyl and you are cutting iron-on vinyl with any machine, you need to mirror the image. So in this case, I went on to select an accessory. However, we don't need to even do that yet. We need to go back. So you'll see me click out of it here. I'm going to click the back button, go back to that previous page, and right up here, you have the option to change your size of your canvas you're working on. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep mine as a 12 by 12. But right down there where it says mirror image on, I'm going to go ahead and click that on. And it's going to flip that over and mirror the image because I'm using iron-on vinyl. Anytime you are using iron-on vinyl, mirror your image. If it's not iron-on vinyl, you don't need to. Iron on, mirror it. And then we'll go ahead and get out of this and go on to the next step now that it's flipped around. So just remember to do that, or when you go to adhere this on later and iron it on, it's not going to be in the right format. It'll be backwards. Now for my material that I am cutting on, a lot of times I cut with cardstock, so that's one of my favorites saved in there. But I am just going to choose premium vinyl. Now the premium vinyl, for whatever reason, always cuts better. I know I will not be using the Cricut brand of premium vinyl, but for whatever reason, their settings on that work the best for all of the vinyls that I have used. So that's what I'm choosing. And then for my pressure setting, if you find you need a little bit more pressure with your machine, click the more button. If you find your machine is just right, keep it at default. If you need a little bit less and you're cutting through that backing sheet or your carrier sheet or whatever you want to call it, choose less. It really is just about what your machine, the pressure it has, and how old your machine is, those kinds of things. but I keep mine at the default setting. That's what works best for me. So that's where I'm going to keep mine. If you feel like your material is a little bit thicker, you can also go with more pressure. If you feel it's a little bit thinner, you can go with less. Choose what works best for you. Now, once I have my pressure chosen, it's going to tell me to go ahead and start loading up my material onto my mat. I will be using my light grip mat, and I'm going to cut my vinyl not completely down to size, but a little bit larger from what I need. I personally do not like to start with a 12 by 12 piece. If you do, absolutely do that. I like to cut mine down beforehand so I have less waste when it comes down to it. It just works better for me. Now, as with any sort of vinyl, you have, or with your iron-on vinyl, excuse me, you have a shiny side and a dull side. When you cut this down and you place it on your mat, you always want to make sure that you're putting that shiny side down. Here's kind of a look at what that looks like in real life. You've got that very shiny, slick side, and then you've got a little bit more of a dull side. Shiny side goes towards the mat, just like with your foiling. That's how you do it. Dull side is the side you want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this down to about 9 inches. I'll cut that down. That's how long I'm going to need it. I'm going about 1.5 inches over from the size that I need just to give myself a little wiggle room. And it's going to create less waste for me later on. And then I'll use about a 6-inch guide here, and I'll go ahead and cut this down. So it's 9 inches wide by 6 inches tall, and that's the size of vinyl I am going to put onto my cutting mat. Now here we go. I've got my shiny side, my dull side. I'm going to go ahead and place this down onto my mat, line it up in the top left-hand corner, and I am going to put that down shiny side facing down. I like to start at the top 2 corners and then just kind of press out. You don't want any air bubbles in this if you can avoid it. And you want to make sure that it's good and pressed down. To make sure that I get it nice and snug against my mat, I like to use a brayer to push this down. Brayers are great for a lot of things, a lot of techniques. This is one of those things it's good for. Also, when my mat needs cleaning, and I am not the best at cleaning my mat, I just like to use little pieces of tape to hold my corners down. It makes sure it doesn't move on me. I do this with cardstock. I do it with my vinyl. I do it with pretty much anything I put in there because I don't like to wash my mats. It is what it is. I don't like to take the time to do it. This works for me. Do what works for you. I started doing this because I had one too many pieces ruined, especially cardstock. And some pretty intricate cuts that just shifted while they were getting cut because my mat wasn't sticky enough or it didn't have enough grip even to begin with to hold that in place. So I like to tape it down using a little bit of masking tape, and now it's time to start cutting. You need to see what cutting tool you need in your machine. Mine's just going to be the regular normal blade, and I've got it in the housing that it says to have it in. Now you want to line it up between your 2 little prongs on your Cricut. I have the Cricut Maker. I will leave all the supplies I used linked over on my Amazon storefront. That link will be down in the description box below. But you want to make sure your mat is underneath those 2 prongs and pushed up against the rollers. So use one hand to kind of hold it there, and then press your little start button, your little arrow button that was blinking. The Cricut is great. It shows you every step along the way. As long as you read the instructions, you shouldn't mess it up. So now it says to press go on my iPad. So I'm going to come back and my little Cricut with its antenna is flashing. So that's the button that I need to push next. So your flashing button is the one you want to push. So I'll go ahead and push it. It's going to take it on in, and it's going to start cutting the file that I want it to cut. Now don't touch it. Don't do anything. Just let it do its cutting job. It's going to go ahead and start cutting. Just leave it alone. Let it do its thing. If you do have any sort of mess up, something shifts, you can always stop it in the middle of the process just by pressing the C button, and it will stop cutting. And then you can get it out by pressing the arrow keys. Now, while it's cutting, you'll also have this on whatever you're using as your kind of interface. So your computer, mine's my iPad, will have a progress bar for you to follow along. Once it's done cutting, it's going to say that it's complete. You can press the OK button, and then the arrows are going to start flashing. But before you take it out, what I like to do is check to make sure that the cut is good, that I will be able to weed it. So I grab my weeding tool and I give it a little check at a corner just to make sure it cut properly. For whatever reason, with my Cricut, if I keep it in there and I cut it again, it will cut exactly along that same cutting line if I need to cut it again. However, if I take it out and reinsert it, even if I do it exactly the same, it's never going to be right. So I like to keep it in there, check it. If I know it's good, then I can go ahead and press that arrow and bring it on out and start to weed it. But I always like to do that little check. If it's not cut properly, go through the cutting process again. Just give it another cut. It will cut along those same lines, only if you've left it in. Now, I like to leave a little extra space with my vinyl just to give myself and my machine some wiggle room. However, I don't want to waste it. I can always use these pieces later for smaller cuts. So I like to use my craft knife and just cut along the very edge of my vinyl piece that I will be weeding. That way, when I'm weeding, I don't screw up this extra vinyl because this vinyl is expensive. Iron-on vinyl is not cheap. It's just not. So I like to keep each and every piece that I can use. Then with some of these smaller pieces, you can again send them through your Cricut, or you can hand cut some pieces if you want to let your kiddos play with it. Using those scrap pieces really saves you a lot of money in the long run. Now, the weeding process, I like to use a weeding tool and my scissors. This is kind of a therapeutic process for some, a pain in the butt for others. It just depends on what kind of person you are. So you're either going to enjoy this process or you're going to hate it. I don't know if there's an in-between. But what you want to do is with your weeding tool, get a hold of a corner and just start weeding away that extra vinyl. What you will be left with is this clear backing paper. I like to go slow and just kind of pull it up. Make sure that the cut is nice. I like to have a pair of scissors on hand, especially for some letters and things like that, just to cut away extra pieces as I'm cutting. I don't like a lot of excess hanging around. So I'll just cut it away and then continue to weed. Now, once you have it kind of pulled up with your weeding tool, you can use your hands to get some leverage on that and pull away, and just continue to weed. Take your time. This isn't a fast process, and you don't want to pull too hard, because even if it is cut but you pull a little bit too much, then you might end up pulling up one of the letters, especially if you have just the tiniest little piece that's stuck. So here on my U, as I'm pulling away, I noticed I had a little bit of a piece that just wanted to hang on for whatever reason. So I just take my weeding tool and kind of run it along those edges. I'll hold the letter or piece down with my weeding tool and then just pull up that extra vinyl with my other hand. And then if you did happen to pull up a letter, just kind of use your finger to rub it back down, and it should just transfer right back down and stick down. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. The curves can get a little tricky, so if you're pulling, you can use your weeding tool to hold down the letter. And like I said, I don't like a lot of excess, so I always keep my scissors on hand and just snip off when I have quite a bit of excess hanging off. And that way I have less to work with, less in my way. Now, if you are a beginner and this is going to be one of your first projects, you do want to make sure that your weeding process is simple. Also, be sure that your vinyl is just a normal vinyl. Don't put yourself through a glitter or specialty vinyl that may be a little bit harder to cut or a little bit harder to weed. Use your normal heat transfer vinyl and take your time. Make it a simple process for yourself so you don't get discouraged. So this is a really great beginner one. Very, very simple, very easy to weed, very easy to design. It doesn't take a ton of work and it's very quick. You can get a lot of these done if you want to do it as a gift for teachers, for anybody. I mean, these are great for girls, they're great for boys. It really is kind of a catch-all gift. But if you're a beginner, set yourself up for success. Don't get yourself frustrated or you won't want to try another one again. So you can see this is a pretty simple one to weed out. Even taking my time, and I left this all in real time so you could see the process from start to finish. So you don't think, oh, it took her 30 seconds. No, it takes a few minutes to get it done. And everybody has a certain amount of time they're willing to do this for. So if you don't like weeding, don't do intricate designs, or do them when you know you have a lot of time to spend or can come back in a few days and continue to work on the process. Also, set yourself up for success by having the right tools to use. A really good pair of scissors. Have that weeding tool, that little pick tool that I'm using right there. It is so helpful just to get some of those last little pieces. And also have a little craft knife on hand. So if you have a little section that does not cut, like this little piece for me, you can just use your little craft blade. This is a cheap one from Menards that I got. So you can just go ahead and give that a quick little cut. Your scissors are another great tool. Make sure you have a pair of fine point scissors that you can get in there and snip those little pieces when they need to be snipped. Set yourself up to where you can succeed, have the right tools to do it, and make sure it's a simple project for your first one. Now here is the completely weeded project. I like to just make sure that everything's still stuck down really well, and then it is going to be time to iron it on. So to iron this on, you first need to find the center of your project. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can just kind of fold it in half and then give it a little iron when you do that, and that will give you your center. I like to use a little bit of piece of tailor's chalk in this video just because it's easier to see. Otherwise, I would be folding it. The folding it method is obviously the easiest and quickest. You can also use a ruler and the tailor's chalk like I'm using here. I just wanted it to be a little bit easier to see in the video. So I'm finding the center, which is 3 inches here. And now I'm just going to make a little mark where the exact center of my bag is. And that is going to be the center of my bag where the center of my design goes. So now I need to find the center of my design. This is super easy. You just take the 2 sides, line them up. So I'm lining up that period and the very edge of the S, and I'm just going to give it a little crease. Not on the vinyl itself, but on the clear part. And then I'll take the top and the bottom, and I'll line up the top and the bottom, not with the sticky sides facing each other, that's important, and give it another little crease. And that is where the 2 lines meet. That's where my center is. So I just line up that center with the center on my bag, and there it is. It's centered. It's really that easy. Just do a couple folds, top and bottom, side to side, and then you're ready to go. You've got the center of your project, you've got the center of your bag, line them up next to each other, perfectly ready to go. Now it's time to iron. You need to heat up your iron before you do this. You can also use a heat press, but I wanted to keep this beginner friendly, so I'm using a household iron. This is a regular iron. I don't have any water in it on the steam setting. And you need to read the directions for your vinyl. So some of them are going to give you exact temperatures. Some of them are going to give you iron settings. For this one, I'm going to turn it up to the settings that my vinyl specifies. If you don't have the exact measurements or the exact temperature, you can Google it and try and get the best results. And start with less and go more if you need to. So again, each direction or application is going to be a little bit different. Look at the directions on your vinyl. Now, because this has two sides, I'm going to insert a little piece of cardboard into my bag just to give it a nice sturdy backing and to make sure that I don't end up kind of fusing the two sides together. I just want a little bit of separation in there, a little bit more sturdiness, so I added that cardboard inside. I also opened the zipper to make it a little bit flatter to work with, and I put a towel down on my surface just to protect it from heat. You can also use an ironing board. I'm just working on my craft table under my camera, so I used a towel, but you can do the same thing. It's that simple. Then line up your two center points. I'm going to go ahead and close this up. Now that I have everything centered and that inserted inside, put a piece of parchment paper over the top. This is optional. I just prefer to do it. On the off chance that any vinyl is kind of sticking out the side, it shouldn't be. But on the off chance that it is, I don't want it stuck to my iron. So I like to put a piece of parchment paper over the whole thing, and then I just follow the directions on my vinyl. This says to kind of hold my iron down on top for about 10 to 20 seconds. So I'll just give it a good press for the 10 to 20 seconds, kind of move it around to the different areas and spots. You want to make sure that you get each individual spot, and each individual spot needs the 10 to 20 seconds on it. So move your iron around as needed and then check it. So don't just go and rip this paper off. Slowly take it off. If it releases easily, the vinyl is stuck. If it starts to pull up the vinyl, immediately stop, put it back down, and press for longer with your iron to fuse it on. If it came off easily, still give your letters a double check. I like to give them a feel once they're kind of lukewarm, not hot, and just make sure that everything is stuck down. If I feel like some of them have a little bit of give, especially those edges, I'll just lay the release paper back over the top and give it another little press wherever I think it needs it. For this, I just felt like it was fused down, but not as fused as I wanted it to be. So I gave it another 2 to 3 seconds with some good pressure. The pressure can sometimes do more for it than the heat, so give it some good pressure and then give it another check. Kind of turn it once it dries. Make sure nothing's coming up. You want this stuck down really well. Once it's good and stuck, you can go ahead and remove that from inside, and it is completely done. If you are giving this as a gift, just be sure that everything is stuck down. You just want to give it some folds. Make sure that none of those edges are loose or coming up. Feel over it with your fingers. Make sure you don't hit any snags on those edges. And then once it's done, you can go ahead and remove your center mark if you did use anything to mark it. If you did the folding technique, you won't need to do this. Since I used some chalk, I just used a baby wipe to remove that, and this bag is good to go. Now for this project, I did use a lot of things that I found at my local craft store. I will do my best to link different products over on my Amazon storefront page that are similar or cheaper from what I found. Also, just some great products to have on hand whenever you're doing heat transfer vinyl projects. So I will leave all of these supplies linked over on my Amazon storefront page. They will be down in my description box below. But there you have it. That is how easy it is to create this little pouch that you can customize to fit any sort of event or gift that you may need. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy crafting.